let's keep it rolling. And of course, somebody's got to be number one. And so I guess that's got to be Texas. Texas number one in the recruiting rankings. And shoot, if Oregon loses and they win on Saturday, they'll be the number one seed in the college football playoffs too. Got Matthew Miller here, holds down our Texas show, of course, on the Texas channel. That's every Monday, and then every Tuesday is the SEC show. Hey, Matthew, how you doing?
Hey, Mark, I am doing well, doing very well.
All right. Well, I think if you ran down every talented player in this class, we would be here for a while. So I'll ask you just to hit the highlights. Was there any late day drama for Texas?
So the drama came the day before. We got news that an unnamed player would be coming to Texas, and it was kind of a lot of like reports where it was going to be a player that Texas wasn't really in communication with, which that was kind of a lie because he was actually committed to Texas, flipped to LSU, and then committed back to Texas, which rarely happens. You see it more in the NIL era now because they narrow it down to 2 or 3, and then you kind of flip back and forth, it seems like. And his name is Cade Phillips. Depending on the source, he's upper 4-star or 5-star cornerback, top 10 cornerback in the country. We won the battle with him over LSU. I know the LSU people were starting to melt down over that because he's a very talented player. And overall, this class, I just love the versatility of this class, especially on the offensive side. You get 3 very good wide receivers. You get Khalil Lockett, who, in my opinion, I actually think he's the best wide receiver in the country. I've said this for a while now. This isn't something I'm saying now. I think he's better than DeCorian Moore. If I'm wrong on that, that's fine. Dalen McCutcheon, a 4-star who he flipped from Florida State a couple months ago from Lovejoy in Texas. Jamie French, also from Mandarin High School in Florida. So you get 3 studs at the wide receiver position. But to me, what you get in this class is the versatility at the side end position. You get Michael Terry, the number 1 athlete in the country, who Texas has already said he's going to play wide receiver. He will play tight end. He will play running back, and he will play H-back as well, so a fullback type of position. And Sark will use him all over the field to create mismatches. And then you get Nick Townsend, who is an absolute freak. The guy runs, I think, like a 10.7 100-meter yard dash as a tight end. So freak athlete. And then you get Emery Winston, who's a 3-star tight end. So the versatility that this offense is going to have going forward with Arch Manning, who I'm going to tell people right now, I think there's a better chance this guy plays 2 years at Texas than most believe at this point. I think those are the reports coming out now, and they have been for a while. He wants seasoning in college. So with these athletes, with Arch Manning throwing them the football, I think there's a very, very good chance this offense becomes super scary. It hasn't been super scary this year, but I think it's going to be in the future with this class.
Got Matthew Miller on the line, hosts our Texas show every Monday. That's at 8 Eastern?
Yes.
8 Eastern on Monday on the Texas channel. The SEC shows on Tuesday, 8 Eastern. Is there anybody that has been a little less regarded, a little bit more under the radar that you like in this class?
Yeah, so I think you can actually scroll down to the very bottom of this list, Mark. His name is Caleb Chester. He is a 3-star cornerback, very low rated. I love the measurables. 6'1", probably 6'2" now, 175, I believe. Really good player. I like him a lot. He fits into this mold of what Steve Sarkisian is recruiting on the defensive side of the ball, which is position versatility and I guess a little bit on the offense, but also extremely great athleticism as well, and a frame that can put on weight. You see that all along the defense, especially the defensive line, but then you get that with a Caleb Chester. You get that with the Cade Phillips, who's very long too. He's also 6'2", the guy we just talked about. Grayson Littleton at cornerback, a 4-star. They're all like over 6'1", and they're long, lanky guys that can play the ball, intercept the ball, and be a playmaker. And we see that with the Texas defense this year. They have, I believe they're leading the country with interceptions with 17 or 18. So they're definitely just passing the baton here with these guys coming in. And then Jonah Williams, the 5-star number 1 recruit, I believe, in our class. He'll play a little bit of safety. I think you'll see him at nickel at certain times. I think you'll see him at linebacker. He's also going to play baseball. And actually, we got him because Jim Schlossnagle left Texas A&M to go to Texas. That was a big deal over the summer. And Jonah Williams loved Jim Schlossnagle, and he basically decided once that happened, he was going to go to Texas because he liked the football program. He wasn't sure about the baseball program at Texas, but once we stole him away, it was all he was all on board for Texas.
So during this down time for Texas football, 2009 up until 2 or 3 years ago, the recruiting classes were still largely stellar. but not pushing for number one in the country. So is this the SEC effect? Is this Sark just being this good? And obviously parlaying some success on the field can't hurt.
Yeah, so I think there's like three or four things that come together. One, you have to admit NIL matters. Texas is definitely an NIL juggernaut. This is the day and age we live in. But also, I believe the on-field success does not hurt that. There's a chance you win the SEC in the first year, and now you have the SEC brand on your chest. That is definitely going to help, along with the NIL. And number one to me, because all these 5 and 4-star guys think they can get to the NFL. That is the ego they have when they step on campus. We are finally developing players. That is something that was not happening under the other coaches. Charlie Strong didn't do it. Tom Herman didn't do it. He didn't make any of the players better. The players here are getting better under Steve Sarkisian. We've seen that. They had 11 or 12 guys drafted last year in the NFL. We're going to have at least 10 or 9 or 10 guys this year minimum to get drafted in the NFL. That is why they are starting to come here, and it's only going to get better. And I didn't even mention this. Tomorrow, Texas solidifies this number one class if they're able to get him. The number 2 defensive lineman in all of the country, and Justice Terry commits tomorrow at noon Eastern time. It's going to come down to Texas or Georgia. Actually, that's what's going to decide the number one class. If Georgia lands him, they're going to have the number one class. If Texas lands him, at worst, I think we finished number 3, but it's still a really good class. Sark now has gone 5th, 3rd, 5th, and another top 3 finish. He is stacking classes like you have to. If you want to win a national championship, you have to recruit at a top 12 level through all 4 years. And if you're not going to do that, then you have to get a generational quarterback. I believe we have a generational quarterback on the roster, plus we are doing that. So he's done a phenomenal job. And I think NIL, player development, and then Texas winning and being in the SEC all has something to do with that.
Jackson, we appreciate you dropping the link to the Texas channel there, folks. Check it out. Again, Matthew's live every Monday on the Texas channel, so check out the content there. And again, the link is right there, so it's only a click away to check out Matthew's most recent show and the video clips from the shows and other content. This matchup against Georgia, why would you expect things to be different this time around, other than the obvious that history shows us that the rematch is typically much different than the first game? But in regards to matchups, what do you think is important on Saturday night? And how important is this game to Texas?
So because it's our first year in the SEC, I was actually on the Georgia channel on the Voice of College Football as well, and I got asked that question. I think because it's the first year in the SEC, I think it is important. I think you want to come in here and win this league in your first year. I think it definitely helps in recruiting. It helps with the brand. It helps with everything. So I think it is important in that regard. Obviously, we're still going to be in the college football playoff. The thing is, if you lose this game, to me, are you going to be the 5 seed? Because then I would actually rather lose this game and be the 5 seed because I know who I'm playing the first 2 rounds. And let's be honest here. I think Texas rolls both Arizona State and UNLV or Boise State or whatever matchup you get. Now, if you can't promise me that, I want to win this game because I think you'll be the number 2 seed at worst. So that's my opinion on that. And in the matchup wise, that game was an outlier. I know people are going to say, "Oh, you're a Texas fan. You're a Texas fan." Georgia had 280 or 58 or 285 yards offense, whatever it was. It wasn't very good, and they scored 30 points. They did that because 4 out of the 6 drives they scored on, they got the ball inside the Texas 35 or better. That is not going to happen Saturday. I'm very confident in saying that. Now, what could happen and what could scare me is Quinn Ewers may not be able to step up in the pocket like he did just in that game, and he got absolutely dominated in that game. I know the offensive line didn't play great, but they played good enough to where there were still lanes for him to step up into, and he did not do that. I believe there were 7 sacks that night, 6 on Quinn Ewers, 1 on Arch Manning. And I think 4 of those were on the quarterbacks. They did not step up into lanes. They ran out of clean pockets for whatever reason. And a lot of that had to do with the disguises Georgia was doing on the back end. And they also locked up very well. So I think Sark he has to change the game plan. Texas likes to start out going east and west. You cannot do that in this game. We cannot throw screens early on. It has to be north and south. It has to be through the running game, which has come on the last month. Trey Wiseman has played phenomenal the last month, as well as the offensive line. So they have to be able to run this football. They have to be able to hit plays down the field. And then if you want to get to the screen game, I think you can do that. But you cannot start out with the screen game in this game. Georgia is way too well coached. They played on their toes all night long and got downhill and attacked Texas. Texas has to avoid that. I think it's going to be a really close game, and I'm excited to watch it. And I think Texas is going to pull it out. I think it's going to be close, though.
Yeah, it should be a heck of a ball game, but not quite the stakes that we've seen in the past. And again, probably, well, Georgia obviously would get probably the 2 seed, and Texas the 1 or the 2 seed, depending on what Oregon does. And then we go from there. Georgia loses, they probably still get a home game. Texas loses, they probably get the 5, although Penn State's there as well, depending on maybe how the deficits involved in those 2 games. Matthew, I don't know if you noticed, but our favorite +or-3 comes into play now that we finished up the regular season. So can you recall who in the SEC would have hit the +or-3?
A lot of teams. Oklahoma, and I love that one because that was one I was on early on.
10-2,
Auburn,
6 and
or
6.
did Auburn or no?
No.
Tennessee?
No.
No. I'm trying to think who hit it. Texas didn't hit it. Alabama hit. Did Alabama hit it? No.
No.
Oklahoma's the only one I can think of, unless Kentucky. Did Kentucky win 7 games last year?
Yes.
Okay, so they're number 2. Vanderbilt.
Yep. 2 and
So
10,
that's
6
3.
and 6.
I'm trying to think who else. That's all
And
I can think of.
I'm almost positive there's just one more. So, folks, we're talking +or-3. It's one of my favorite stats. So, which schools went either increasing in 3 wins or more, or decreasing from the previous season? So, your high risers and your
South Carolina.
yes, South
Okay.
Carolina, 5 and 7, 9 and 3, 4-game difference. So 4 in the SEC.
Yeah,
I
which
think I
is
hit
a
them
little
all.
bit. It's a little bit less than normal, isn't it? Usually get 5 or
Yeah,
6.
there were 7 in the Big Ten.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, I predicted South Carolina to go 7 and 5, so I was higher on them than most. I did not see 9 and 3, so I was kind of surprised by that.
Yeah,
Where
absolutely.
where do you think where I should say this, if Georgia loses this game, is it possible, because they want to avoid a rematch with Texas for a 3rd time, that they put them at the 8 or 9? And if Texas is the 2 seed, I should say.
They shouldn't do any of that, but they will. And I get it. It's an entertainment product. So if Georgia loses, they're 10 and 3. Then what do we got? We've got, let's say, Oregon
Oregon
1,
wins.
Texas 2. We get the other 2, and then we've got Penn State 5, unless they lose, and maybe it's Ohio State. Who knows? Notre Dame 5. Penn State, Ohio State in some order, 5, 6, 7. Then we go Georgia. I guess they keep them in front of Tennessee because of the head-to-head, even though they've got a 3rd loss. So, yeah, then they're going to have to do something with Tennessee to avoid. I don't know if they want Georgia and Tennessee playing in the first round either.
Yeah, that you're going to have rematches, but it would suck to. I'm going to be honest. I don't want to play Georgia a 3rd time, especially 2 times in a month period. I don't want to do that. It's going to be interesting, especially since I think that's our worst matchup out of all the teams. I think Georgia just matches up really well versus us, but I think it's going to be a close game.